Take you through the story on the Air India crash probe. Supreme Court has now stepped in on the Air India 171 tragedy. Acting on a plea by the Safety Matters Foundation, a bench from the Supreme Court led by Justices Surya, Kant and N. Kotiswar Singh have asked the centre to respond on calls for a court-monitored independent probe. The crash in Ahmedabad that killed 241 people, 230 passengers and 12 crew members. Now, families and experts have challenged the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau's preliminary report that blamed the pilots, basically in a way pointing fingers to the pilots. In fact, their lawyer, Prashant Bhushan, says that the report violates the rules on full disclosure and suppresses factual data. The father of Captain Sumeet Sabharwal has also written to the Aviation Ministry, clearly calling suggestions that his son deliberately caused the crash as baseless and defamatory. Basically, that report that insinuated it was the pilot's error. The father of that pilot says that this is an absolute insult to my son. It's baseless, it's defamatory, and there should be an independent probe to find out what really happened. Pilots Union and Air India have rejected the AAIB's findings. In fact, the initial report that came in by the AAIB, Pilots Union and Air India have rejected the report. They warn against repeating the mistake seen in 2018 when Boeing first blamed pilot Bhavye Suneja. In fact, Bhavye Suneja, when Boeing first blamed pilot Bhavye Suneja for a Lion Air crash, until later probes exposed a design flaw in the Boeing 737 MAX. With this case, the Air India Ahmedabad crash, these pilots associations say, let's not make the same mistake as to what happened then with Bhavye Suneja. The Supreme Court has called this only logical now to demand for a fair probe, especially with selective leaks like flight recorder data already in circulation. The centre must now respond to the demand for a court-monitored investigation, something that the families say is right now vital for both truth and aviation safety. Let me bring in Sanjay Karve, aviation expert and former accountable manager, Aviation Government of Maharashtra, joining me live. We also have Captain Akshay Chopra, aviation expert and former IAF pilot. Let me start with Captain Sanjay Karve, your take on the report that was initially filed by the AAIB. We know the family members of the pilot and also the Pilots Association, the Pilots Union rather, who objected to this report. First of all, a lot of the findings of that report has already come to public knowledge, and they say that this is against the rule, that these findings should not have been leaked, and now that it has, they have a lot more of conviction now to push for an independent court-monitored probe. Would you believe a court-monitored probe in this case is necessary at this point?
Nabila, good evening. If you remember, when the crash took place, I had also pointed out that from the time the aircraft battery is switched on, the cockpit voice recorder starts recording. The crash took place roughly between 35 to 45 minutes after the aircraft was powered on. Why is it that only 20 seconds of the voice recorder was put into public domain? And the way it was put across, it was a very subtle way of saying that, look, there is a high probability that the pilots may be at fault. In fact, at that point of time also, I had questioned this AIB's concept of doing the selective leak or selective truth. Yes, those particular conversations obviously have taken place since it is recorded in CVR. But we would like to know what was the conversation before that? What happened for 30 minutes or 35 minutes prior to this conversation? Why is it that only the selective 3 sentences have been put in? Was the AIB under some pressure from some external agencies? So as to, the standard practice, the aviation fraternity follows is, if the pilot is dead, nail the pilot. It solves a lot of problems for everyone because the manufacturer goes scot-free, the owner of the aircraft goes scot-free, the operations team goes scot-free. It becomes a pure pilot error. Even if it's a pure pilot error, one needs to figure out why does a trained pilot make a mistake. I think what Supreme Court has done is absolutely right. It is a rap on the knuckle of AIB that, look, when you are carrying out an inquiry, either you carry it out the American way, where everything is open. The people are permitted to attend the inquiry sessions. and monitor each and everything which happens throughout the inquiry period, whatever time it may take. And this is no way of, or you keep quiet. You say, look, at this point of time, we are not in a position to give you a preliminary report. We are in as much dark as you are. Allow us to complete the entire probe, and then we will come up.
But how is the information already out, sir? The AAIB's report information, a lot of the findings already has been revealed. It's on public platforms. Is that allowed? And that's only bringing a lot of grief to the family members of the pilot, that making it worse, precisely what the Supreme Court has observed. But is that, how ethical is that?
It is totally unethical and it is not allowed. But these are all selective leaks. If you remember, even before the AAIB preliminary report came out, the BBC and CNN had quoted the same report saying this is what has happened. It is pure pilot error. He switched off. How did CNN or BBC get this news that the pilot has switched off? Now someone is talking, no, the FedEx may be having a problem. The FedEx is controlled by power supply. But no one wants to delve on that because, like I said, it's a very easy solution. Pilot error. Now, leaking of this report, this is a very serious issue. Obviously, someone within the AIB or someone within the MOCA, that is Ministry of Civil Aviation, who has access to this information, has been selectively leaking it out. Instead of saying no comments, which otherwise the government agencies are very happy to say that we have no comments to offer at this point of time. Yet they're selectively leaking only to organizations or places or people whom they feel comfortable with. And these are the people then who spread. Now, this is half information, and this is going to put the families in grief, families in pressure. Everyone would like to know as to what actually has happened in that accident. People have died, they have become history, but that does not mean that it would be forgotten. We need to know, and this step by Supreme Court, I think, is absolutely right that it needs to be probed. The government needs to be step in, and an inquiry cannot be giving out information on piecemeal basis, and that to what suits them or what suits other agencies. What it appears now is we are catering to some external agencies while leaking these reports, which is totally unfair.
Yeah. It almost looks done deliberately. To say whose face or brand, I'm not sure. I can't speak. As a journalist, I'm responsible enough not to say it. But maybe Captain Akshay Chopra could give us a little insight into that. First of all, unethical to leak findings of the report. And secondly, that report suggests that it was the pilot's error. What lessons are the pilots union asking for the authorities to learn when they speak about the 2018 Bhavya Suneja case? Similarly, the pilot was blamed, Bhavya Suneja was blamed, and then later they came about to find that it was the make of the plane that was faulty. Would you give us a little, explain to us exactly Captain Bhavya Suneja's case and why it really echoes today?
Okay, so Nabila, first of all, thank you for having me. And from the day this crash happened, we are all trying to link up the reasons which possibly could have gone wrong. And we are, all the pilots are brainstorming, calling each other, trying to understand. When the preliminary reports came out, we were actually quite taken aback because if you see the reports, they have tried their best to just selectively take out certain points. And it was very weird to see that type of a report, in the open. Either you don't take out the report, either report should not come out. You hold on. Nobody told you to be in a hurry. And then you take out selective points. And as Captain Karve also said, what about the entire conversation? Was the only conversation which came out in public domain in the reports was that who cut off the fuel switch? Did you cut off the fuel switch? The other said, no, I did not cut off. Was this the only conversation from the point they started? What about the parameters of the aircraft? What about the engine performance? What about the electronics performance? Nothing has come out, and this is exact what the court said. So it's kudos to the court, and especially the Safety Matters Foundation who took up the PAL. The report has come out. Second thing is, when you talk about the, trying to blame a pilot, we saw that the moment this report came out, selective report came out, the Western media was hell-bent on taking out reports that somehow the pilot is to be blamed. And I said in earlier interview also that when billions are involved in such cases, lives don't matter. And we have to be very, very careful. That's where the Supreme Court verdict, the current verdict, is something which was abated, which is very important. the dignity of the families, who has suffered. The pilots' families are there. They've already lost a son. They have lost a brother, a father, and now imagine somebody without any reports trying to blame that, okay, it's the pilot who has done something wrong, despite of the fact that when the only thing they said was the fuel switches were cut off. And despite of the fact that the fuel switches were put to run position, the engine started running, but they were not able to get to the full speed and power because of lack of height. So till now, there's absolutely no reason how you could blame the pilot.
Yeah.
We are not saying that this possibility cannot be there, but with the reports which they have taken out, there is nothing which is coming out, and that's a great thing by the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court very clearly has sent a notice even to the centre asking for their response on an independent court-monitored probe. Do you believe that this will really set precedence on many levels, Captain Sanjay?
Absolutely. This would set a precedence, and it will serve as a nice warning to the AAIB or to the Ministry of Civil Aviation or any investigating agency from the government which is investigating an accident which involves lives of common men or common people. Any inquiry which takes place of the VIPs, they go overboard in looking at the nitty-gritties. But an accident like this, 250 odd people have lost their lives, and you find an easy way out by, just giving 3 sentences and making it very obvious that it is pilot error, and then you add a line. No, 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 don't take anything. This is just a preliminary report. This is not a final report. You're not supposed to draw conjecture. If that be so, why do you release it? Then what is the preliminary report for? Is it a matter of fact? If it's the information that was not given, that thing does not talk. What was the amount of fuel? Was the aircraft at max swallow weight? It does not talk as to why did the aircraft take practically the entire length of runway. You don't require a full report. These are the things which should have come out. No one talks about that.
Sir, would you want to give us a little insight on the 2018 Lion Air case where Bhave was, blamed that it was his error, Bhavya Saneja. There were claims. If you have an idea of the case, would you want to give us a little context to what happened then and why it's alarming right now? It's echoing even with this.
When the 737 MAX accident took place, the first accident took place in Indonesia, where unfortunately there was an Indian pilot in command. They found it much easier to blame the Indian pilot, and we have that standard refrain. Oh, Indian pilots are not trained well. They do not have sufficient amount of training, sufficient amount of experience, and they are prone to accidents. The hard fact of life is, I think the training pattern followed in an Indian system or the checks and balances of procedures are much more difficult than in Western countries. In this particular case, when the accident took place, they said, well, he was not able to control the aircraft. Aircraft was giving him adequate warning. But here was an emergency which was not covered anywhere in the book, neither discussed anywhere. Now that MCAS, which was introduced into the 737 MAX, which was supposed to be a game changer, when it led to another accident in the African continent, that was the time people got a little shaken up. And why this happened is that particular government took a very firm stand, saying that, sorry, we cannot go purely by the statement is a pilot error. We need to investigate it thoroughly as to why this has happened. That was the time the manufacturer sheepishly admitted, well, we introduced something new and we thought that we have covered it in some manual and the pilots do not require any training for it. And why was it so? Because the cost for training would automatically have got increased. You would require more number of simulator hours. That was the time people realized or accepted it was not a pilot error. It was an equipment error or a training error where people forgot to tell. Pilots are the people who need to be told if there are some changes in the aircraft configuration. You cannot leave it in some obscure corner of a 600-page manual and then expect that, oh, well, he's a pilot in command. He should know the manual backwards. No, it doesn't happen like that. If you're adding something radically new, you need to tell him, you need to train him.
Correct.
He's got lives. He's responsible for that. It's so easy to blame.
No, Air India has also objected to it. Air India has also objected to the report. Would Captain Akshay give us a take on that? As Air India, we hear, has also objected to the report.
Yes, yes. In fact, Air India has objected to the report that please do not make any conclusions before the final findings are
Yeah, because
out.
it almost then points fingers to Air India's pilot training, and there's been already a lot of questions being asked about Air India not giving enough, rest time for their pilots, not training their pilots well enough. All those questions being raised. So it's integrity for Air India as well. For them too, it's a big blow if indeed it was the pilot's fault.
Uh, Look, though it is a big blow, but all the reasons which people are trying to put on the pilot, that he was having, the first reason which came out in the Western media was that he was having some mental issues, some psychological
Yeah.
issues. This is this is a blatant lie. There was the medical reports of Captain Sabharwal and the co-pilot are clearly out. There was absolutely no problem. They were fit to fly, and the past history also indicated no such thing. Now, the second thing was that there was not given enough rest. So, Nabila, in all of our cases, let's say today I'm flying an aircraft and there is a limit to the flying hours, which I'm sure the captains, the pilots were there, they were not overflowing. But even if that was the case, then it does not happen that the aircraft crashes. We are well capable of flying with, even if we are fully fatigued, maybe minor issues can come in, but this is something very fatal. Here we cannot accept that, okay, it was due to crew fatigue or something else. No. What they're trying to right now do is somehow take out very selective piece of information from the reports, put it in the public domain, in the minds of people, that somehow people should think that, okay, it's not the aircraft, it's ultimately something to do with the pilots. And the moment this report came out, the Western media jumped onto it. The Wall Street Journal and the CNN, everybody was that exactly what Captain Karve said, just to prove that Indian pilots are incapable. In fact, with the on the Bhavya Suneja case also, Captain Bhavya Suneja, he reportedly requested the aircraft to be returned to the airport. And there were technical instrument warnings when the aircraft took off. There were conflicting readings between the pilot and the co-pilot, and the aircraft crashed. But and eventually when they found out, it was not the pilot, it was the problem with the aircraft. It was a technical issue. And this is what they're trying to do. So and the Supreme Court, as it said very clearly, hold on, there is no hurry. Please take your time before you put out the complete findings, and then you take a decision that exactly what happened.
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate Captain Akshay Chopra and Captain Sanjay Karve for joining us. I'm really hoping that the families here find some peace after what has happened, and maybe this Supreme Court monitored probe will give them faith, hope, and something to live by. At least knowing that there is an independent probe will give them some hope that justice will come about. Because imagine what the parents could be going through for their sons to be blamed for what happened without an actual thorough investigation. It's dying 1,000 deaths for the family members. So I really pray that this court monitored probe happens, and let's just wait for the truth to come out. Thank you.